Welcome, everybody, to our regular Sunday interview here at the Veil of Sound. But to me, at least, this is not a regular interview because we want to talk about a record that, amongst some others, opened a lot of doors for me. I'm very, very happy to have Eric from Don Caballero here on the show. So, Eric, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, the record that we're going to talk about in detail is American Dawn, which will be released March 27th, re-released through Touch and Go Records as a triple LP, triple gatefold. And as I know from sources, aka PayPal, the shipping to Germany is more expensive than the record.
That I didn't know. If you told me
or
that,
it's nearly. Yes.
That's surprising.
$80
Wow.
just for shipping handling. But what should you do if you like a record, right? Eric, the first thing that we always do here on the show is the plug of the day. I've already told you how it works, and I want to plug a band that, to me at least, it's not very similar to Don Cap, but somehow in my mind, I always put them in the same category, and that's Giraffes. Giraffes, a band that was active until I think 2022. I don't know if they're on hiatus or if they're still doing something. I would hope they are. San Francisco based. So yeah, if anybody from Giraffes hears this, hit us up as soon as you want to do something else. And now, Eric, your chance to pluck a band that you want to support, that you want to push a little more, where you say they should be more popular.
Geese.
Geese. Okay.
Does that joke land with you at all?
Isn't there this American band that was popular last year very much?
They're like, I've heard very little of them, to be honest. They're like kind of the opposite of what you're proposing here. They're like a super hype
Highly
band.
popular.
Right. And I have nothing bad to say about them at all.
Yeah.
I'm super happy for them and all the success they're having. But I feel like I see it a little differently now, and how, from having been around like long enough, it like, oh, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Good, and anyway, so that's like it, but the amount of noise, it's really incredible. But something a little smaller, like there's a record that I've been listening to a lot lately. I think it came out in 2024. And if I'm saying the artist name wrong, I might be Minimo, I think it is. It's like a UK garage kind of producer. I don't know. I just know this one song called I Only Smoke When I Drink. It's like a minimal.
And that's one of the best song
Do you know it?
titles, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
I've heard that track, yes.
All right. It might be a really popular club track, but it's new to me, and it's like a really sparse, minimal track. I really love the production of it. I just kind of been banging to it.
Is that something that you dig nowadays, or maybe also already when you were in Don Cap, like minimal, or let's also say electronic music?
Yeah, that was like that was something we were interested in, kind of starting more with Storm and Stress, and certainly an influence on Don Cab, like, or certainly for me and Ian, uh, when a lot of the minimal, like electronic, like all music and that kind of stuff started coming over. Um, so we were definitely looking at that, like absorbing
And
it.
then you are in a band which is very much the opposite of minimal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really funny.
Um,
Yeah.
when talking about American Dawn, the first thing that comes to my mind, and I have to get that joke off my chest before I die. What is your favorite mobster movie? Because American Dawn.
Yeah. Um, Wow. Well, I want to pick like a really not obvious one, obviously.
Well,
You
but
know,
sometimes the obvious ones are the ones that are just simply classics.
that's true. That's true. Let me think about this. You
Okay,
know,
I'll pick one while you think.
yeah, yeah.
When it
You
comes
tell me
to
your,
whole mobster universes and like long ongoing threats, I think nothing beats The Godfather. When it comes to single mob movies, nothing beats Goodfellas.
hmm. It's hard to argue with that, I think. You know, I probably couldn't give you a better answer than Goodfellas. Like, yeah, I really love Casino. Like, that's a
Yeah,
really fun movie to watch. Is that a mob
definitely.
movie? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Is Departed? Like, we're just talking about Scorsese movies.
Oh, I think like if we talk like
Yeah.
with Departed, mm, maybe, probably in a way,
Mm,
yes. I mean,
mm,
it's still Scorsese, yes, of course,
yeah.
probably.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say Godfather, but you're
Okay.
right. Godfather's the classic. Godfather's the best. Godfather 2, some say is better, right?
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
always pick the trilogy as a whole.
A
That makes it
trilogy.
easy. Yeah.
But many think the third is unwatchable or
Yeah, but
nearly,
that's the
right?
same with Indiana Jones. Like many people say, like, oh,
Yeah,
one of them is
yeah.
shit. Although I think that Temple of
T-
Temple of Boom is a better one than most people think.
yeah, as a kid, I remember really liking it.
Yeah, when I was a kid and I watched it first time, I was like, "This is scary."
Yeah.
Let's get back to American Dom. And when we are talking about such a classic record in a way, I think it's very, very hard to define. So I thought for myself, okay, which one word would make me or would in a way for me describe a record? And I came up with only one word, and to me it's floating. Because with that you can imply small little innuendo waves washing ashore, and floating can also be giant waves crashing over your head. If you had to describe American Dawn in one word, is there one word that you could use in order to describe it in a minimal way?
We may be in the realm of no words.
That might also be interesting.
Um,
No, honestly, it might. I think no words is also a good sign because I remember when that was my first Don Cap record that I really listened to, and I was sitting there, mouth open, and I know for a fact because I saw two other people just sitting there and listening to Don Cap for the first time at that moment, and we were all looking at each other and we were like, "What the fuck just happened?" We were lost for words. Um, I hope that did not happen to you while you were making the record.
well, it's funny you like mentioned that feeling, right? That feeling of loss for words. Um, because for me, this project is like goes back to that moment, not that wordless, that feeling that you have when you hear a band. This was for me hearing the band for the first time, right? Like coming to all of this, coming to the band, coming to American Dawn, like before even like talking about American Dawn, I'm like, I have to go back to that kind of wordless place of like something deeper. And that for me is like the moment of like first hearing this band and first hearing Damon play drums. That that's a moment that I remember in my life at a young age, like 16, like feeling deeply. I heard this music and I stopped in my tracks.
Mhm.
and I started headbanging, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm just like in a flow. Your analogy of like waves is good. It's like there's a flow to this music that you ride. You're in it, and whatever this album is like an extension of that. That for me is like uh, that feeling, right? So bringing it back to the album, I want to almost use a word like precise,
Mhm.
but I don't feel like we were so much about precision, you know? And I'd like to use a word like colorful,
Mhm. Definitely.
but I don't know what colors I'd use to describe. You know, it's like, I guess without getting too ephemeral about it,
I mean,
I
like,
guess,
if we stick to colors,
yeah,
if we stick to colors, then we are very much, I think, on a brighter side of the color palette. There's not a lot of browns, no grays, no blacks, a few whites maybe, but you know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, the album is like, you know, it's funny. Where I recently like I spent more time with it, like a lot of time with it in like the last recent years, but um, it's led me like a few places with like why this album. Like I'm in this band. I'm lucky to have played on this record. Like it's a privilege for me. Like I, you know, I came to this band more than anything as a fan first, and almost by luck, ending up getting to be in the band. Like, you know, I was in Storm of Stress with Ian, and then when my time came up for bass for this band, you know, it was we had already, you know, Ian and I had already had a like established musical relationship, and Damon and I already had a really close friendship.
Mhm.
So just like entering into the fold of the band was like there's a version of me where I look at it back from like hearing the band the first time from my parents' kitchen to you know almost the inevitability of being in the band, like approaching it from that angle and looking at it back now and knowing that this album is it seems to be the album that people recognize as a sort of uh, I don't know, the Don
It's
Cab
one of
album that
yeah, it's one of two records that are usually referenced as the Don Cap records.
yeah, that's what it seems like, and I'm so like honored to be like a part of that. And and I think about like what makes it different because for me, like growing up and listening to For Respect and Don Cap 2 and those records for me, they were just so powerful and important. And yeah, I wouldn't be the musician or the artist that I am today without those albums. They're so deeply ingrained in me. And this is before, you know, I ever touched like picked up a bass, man, you know, and so
So you were
there's
a
that
Don Cap fan before you were a musician?
so much more deeply a fan. Like, you know, the second I heard Unresolved Karma, I went to every show they played in Pittsburgh and just when I first heard them, I didn't know what the band was, right? And the DJ came on, is like, that's Don Caballero from Pittsburgh's own, the mighty Don Caballero. And I remember I was just like, oh my God, like two things just happened. Like my earth has just been rocked by this, I don't know what. And this music, it's like not anything I ever heard before. And these guys are from my hometown. And there just like has to be something. I always talk about how there's this Don Cab itself is like Pittsburgh is so deeply in the band, the
Mm.
roots of the band. But so to go right, so I've got now this thing seems so much more alive and real. So I started going to see all their shows and like eventually become friends with them, and so we had this relationship that carried over into this. Just to come back to to American Don, like what's in that album that I've identified that's not as rich in other Don Cab albums is, I think, a deeper kind of emotional bond, like a kind of brotherhood, almost like a familial relationship between the three of us that comes through in the music. And because it's like instrumental, like, hey, it's all in the music. There's no room for words, right?
It's interesting that you say
So,
room for words because there is one Don Cab record where they actually have words. It's Punkgasm. Um, do you have an idea why there have never been any vocals on Don Cab records before?
um, well, I think like early on they tried. My memory is like early on, maybe Damon tried singing on one song, and there was some talk about maybe bringing someone in. I don't remember
Mhm.
how they ended up deciding ultimately, like just doing it as instrumental. I think it was obvious, probably. I was like the drummer singing, you know, and that's when I heard it. That was what I heard. It was the first thing I heard, you know. Mike's playing
Mm.
these beautiful chords on Unresolved Karma, you
Yeah,
know. Mike's a Buddha, and he's just like giving the space to Damon to express himself.
yeah.
So that's a really powerful record. Anyway,
There are two
you
things that
don't
I
need to
would like
sing
to
them.
connect to your answer because you've spoken about this kind of familial bond and like brotherhood. And that is something that I also think it was always part of Don Camp, but I think on American Don, there is even more of these kind of tongue-in-cheek jokes that brothers would have amongst themselves, especially if you look at the track titles, like you drink a lot of coffee for a teenager,
Mm.
like details on how to get Iceman on your license plate. I mean, like it's like it always feels as if there are three guys on stage, three brothers on stage who just they wrote this beautiful music, this very also complicated music, and then they just gave it song titles that make no sense.
um, yeah. Well, it's not that random, honestly.
I
Um,
believe it isn't.
Historically, Damon's written all the song titles. I'm pretty sure almost all of them. I think Ian's written a few of them. On this album, I wrote most of the song titles, which is like, of course, an honor to be allowed to permitted to do that by Damon. Uh, and they kind of came all right around the same time, and we'd had working titles for these songs, for a long time. And I think that like a lot of things, like it's in my nature to like push a deadline and just like let the work flow.
Mhm.
I think we kind of had to deliver some titles, and it kind of flowed like in one session of like had the TV on in the background, and I was like thinking about the record, and then these titles just came, and like I look at them now and like they're funny, and they're just kind of like Don Cap titles, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and but they do, I will admit that it's like if you asked me to like pair some of those songs with the actual music, I mean the titles with the music, I might have a hard time. Like I think we always referred to the working titles live, and Yeah, I'm not sure which song "You Drink a Lot of Coffee,
And
13 Years," to tell you
yeah, right. And at the same time, that also speaks for the record because, again, it's this kind of flow that the whole thing has. And of course, the flow, whenever we're talking about Don Cap, let's be honest, it depends a lot on the rhythm section. One of the most watched and one of the most sectioned rhythm sections that I've ever heard, in the word, like people look at every little thing that Damon is doing, every little thing that the bass is doing. Um, and you've already mentioned it a few times. You came into the band, I think, in '98, so shortly before American Dawn was conceived. Um, how was that for you? I mean, like you've already spoken about the familiarity aspect, but as a musician, how did it make you feel to get into this band where every little thing that the rhythm section does is being analyzed?
Um, well, it
Frightening
was a
or
ch
euphoric?
it was a challenge. Like my journey to bass and Don Cab is pretty much this. When I started going to Don Cab shows, they were a trio because they didn't have a bass player. They played shows all the time without a bass player.
Mhm.
Um, and there was a point even then when I was around 17 where I kind of even thought like maybe I could try out for these guys. I played guitar and like I even mentioned it to one of my friends and he was like, "You're not good enough to be in Don Cab, man." And I was like,
Good friend.
"Yeah, you're right." Yeah, I'm like, "You're right, man." And I was like, and I kind of forgot about that, you know. And over time, though, I got to know the guys and became really close with Ian, and we just had like a natural rapport. And obviously, we ended up playing in Storm and Stress together, and that was just like I kind of fell into that. I just kind of was in the moment there at the right time when they were playing with George Dragons, who technically started Storm and Stress with Kevin, and um, George quit, and I was like just right there, ready to play, like ready to go. Like I wanted to play guitar, and Ian was like, "Why don't you try bass?" I was like, "Okay." And I got in on bass, and I was like, "I don't want to play bass. I'm not a bass player. I don't know how to play bass." And so I approached it totally differently. I just approached it. I approached it as something that I wanted to make interesting, in a way that bass wasn't to me. So on the first Storm and Stress record, I'm sort of like learning my way around it. By the second Storm and Stress record, I feel like I really like found a style and a sound which was not traditional bass playing.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, and this is now by 1998, we're all living in Chicago. They'd made What Burns, and the tour for What Burns was already booked. And Pat called me 2 weeks before the tour, and it was like, "Oh, hey man, you got to do this tour for me. I can't do it. I can't leave my work. I'm gonna get fired." Whatever. I don't remember the exact story, but it was like, "You got to do this tour for me, right?" And Ian remembers, and I kind of have a vague memory also of like having mixed emotions about it. Like, it seemed inevitable that this was going to happen now to me. Like, Pat was going to quit. It was like somebody was going to have to step in. Obviously, it would be me now. So by the time I was actually like in the band, going on the tour that we were about to embark on, it was the first Don Cab tour in like 4 year, 5 year. I can't remember how many years, but Mike
Must
had
have
moved to New
been
York.
four minimum.
Yeah. So it was like a real gap between Don Cab 2 and What Burns coming out. And nobody knew what that tour was going to be like. And maybe Pat even was like, yeah, like I can't risk my job for this tour, whatever. I don't, remember the detail, but Um, so I ended up like in 2 weeks learning the whole set. Pat made me a tape. I wish I still had. Um, but with that, I learned how to play bass, man. And I learned from my hero. Like, there's only one Don Cab bass player. It's Pat.
Because you
Yeah.
yourself don't consider yourself. Yeah, I get it.
I mean, Pat and Damon, I mean, to me, that's the Don Cab rhythm section. Um, I, my role, I actually view a little differently. I've come to view my role a little more as a bridge between what Mike left behind, filling a void of a little bit of what Mike left, and what Pat also provided. So when we started writing American Dawn, that's when that really came into play.
Hmm.
But as far as my, relationship to bass, the instrument,
Yeah,
and as it pertains to Don Cab, like playing that straight bass style like Pat plays. I mean, it's Pat.
yeah.
I love Pat. Watching Pat play is just incredible.
So
Anyway,
then the way that you describe it, probably the most difficult thing for you was to find your place in that whole Don Cap sound universe, right?
yeah, musically, when we started writing, that was, and again, I think this is like another part of what makes American Donna interesting is like we hit that tour with Mike, and it's in '98, and it's like we were like overwhelmed by the response. Like, people are coming out like in the hundreds. Like, wow, we weren't expecting this. So by the time we got to the second leg of that What Burns tour in Europe, and we knew like Mike wasn't going to do it. Like Mike was used all his vacation days and he's not ready to commit to more. But like, Ian and Damon and I at that point were like, this is rolling,
Yeah.
how can we stop this? So, we started looking at that and like okay, what happens if, when we lose Mike, what are we going to do then? And I think at that point, we'd already had some tours booked or some shows. We got an offer to play in Italy, and we called John Fine, our friend John Fine, because like, we you know John Fine, obviously,
Pitch Magnet.
or yeah,
For anybody who wants to know what he's doing right now, we did an interview with him
great,
2 years
yeah,
ago, something like that.
cool, yeah, great. Um, he's still active, still
He
making
is.
records, yeah,
Yeah, we
and
contain multitudes.
yes, great. So he came and filled in for Mike, and I think it was in that experience that it became clear to us that like, not that he wasn't the right fit, but it was like, how do we replace Mike? Do we replace Mike? And Damon kind of early on started saying like, let's go forward as a trio, and I think Ian and I resisted that a bit, and eventually when we went to play as a trio, it was kind of rough at first. It was like we were pretty unsure, I think. Um, and that was shortly after that was when the loop pedal came in. And
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Like that
yeah,
Akai head rush.
yeah. That's like a defining moment in like the trio. That wasn't actually the head rush that turned it around, but the Boss DD5 is the pedal. It has a loop function, like
Yeah.
a 2-second loop function on it. Anyway, so we started using those, like that just changed everything. And it gave us like a direction that we needed. And so that shaped the song. That ultimately just like shaped that record so much. Like it's so woven into the writing of it. Uh, you know,
And
all
you've
that.
already
Yeah.
mentioned the writing process.
Yeah.
Do you remember how long it took for the three of you to come up with those nine tracks for American Dawn?
I know we started like in June or July of '99, and I feel like Damon recently said that we started recording in November of that same year of
Mhm.
99.
Must be 99, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if that's accurate, but it's possible we did. So it could have been that 6 months, you know? I feel like we didn't finish that album until like February or March, but that may have been just the mixing. So,
And then you were also again in a lucky position because Don Cab only ever did two records with Albini. You're on one of them. How was that experience of going? It's like, isn't it like another? How isn't it like another what the fuck moment? Like, how can this all happen to me in a positive way?
it's been my whole life, my whole life. Yeah, look, yeah, we did the first Storm and Stress album with Steve Albini, and that, uh, for me, going to work with him as like I was 19, I think I was 20, and I loved his records that he made and everything, and obviously he's a hero to a lot of people. So yeah, going to meet him and work with him and do that album, it was actually really challenging. It was really hard, but he was incredible and awesome and very natural to be around and hang out with. Uh, but then when we came time to do the American Dawn album was when it actually he Storm Stress we did at CRC, Chicago Recording Company, in downtown Chicago because we wanted to record in a big room. We wanted to record room sound, which at the time, Steve wasn't really famous for or anything, you know. Uh, but we did that with him there, and then when he built Electrical, we earlier actually, so Storm and Stress we made in 2000. I guess it was '99 now. We recorded two albums. Ian and I did two albums. We did the Storm and Stress album and we did American Dawn. And we recorded the Storm and Stress album with Jim O'Rourke in Studio B at Electrical. So we spent a lot of time that year at Electrical. And then when we did when we were working in Studio B, they were finishing Studio A, and Studio A was going to be this immaculate drum room. And so what we learned about that drum
Which is
room,
kind of important for someone like Dane.
exactly. And so when they'd finished that room right around when we were getting ready to record. And Damon was just like, we're going there. We're going with Steve. We're doing it with Steve in that room. And Ian and I were definitely in different places thinking about like creatively, like we were playing with these pedals and I know that we wanted to like play with technology more. And in the studio, when they made Don Cab 2 and What Burns, they worked in Pro Tools with Al Sutton. And at the time, like it was still kind of a new technology, but like we were hearing things about it that were like intriguing and like, I don't know, just like we could do stuff with that. That could be fun. We were looping the guitars, like, oh, maybe we would get in and loop drums. Like, who knows? So eventually there became this sort of back and forth argument about like where we would record, who we would record with. But Damon always insisted that we were going to do it at Albini's. And so that is sort of the story of how this Greg Norman version of the album came to be. That we ended up doing it with Albini, which I mean, the experience of making the record there at his newly built Studio A, this is his, you know, Valhalla. This is, and it's like it's a beautiful place to work, an incredible studio, and it's it's just fun being around Steve. And it was like we actually had a pretty good time making the album, but we had like technical challenges. We were like, we'd written all these songs on these loop pedals, and not thinking it through that much when we got to the studio. We were like, oh, wait a second. These, we can only record mono. Like these have single outputs and we're just stacking these guitars right on top of each other in a mono signal. So what were we going to make a, all the guitars being on one side or, so we encountered these sort of technical challenges where we're like, oh, well, we can't work like that. So we had to work around it we sort of had to change the way we played. And in that experience, it felt like some of the essence of the work we were doing with the loop pedals was getting lost.
Yeah,
and it sort of felt like we were reducing, pulling back from the thing that allowed us to be where we were. And so as we were making that album, it felt like when I think back on the making of it, it felt not sterile, but a little more cautious and a little more, I don't know,
less
restrained.
dangerous.
Just a little, maybe a little less dangerous, but yeah, a little more restrained, I think, is a better way of putting it. And ultimately, when we finished the album, like that was sort of like my sort of initial takeaway was pulling back from it was like, yeah, we kind of were in there like thinking a little too much, and the songs feel a little slower, a little more sluggish, like, and it felt too long. It felt like there were too many songs. So anyway, so that's sort of the story of how this Greg Norman record came to be. The tapes, I should call them, they're the result of, I guess, sort of a lot of doubt, self-doubt.
When looking at the record, and also, of course, at many Don Cap records, but this one might be the penultimate, as I said already, maybe with Don Cap too. There is something about the music that always struck me, and that is something that you share with a lot of records, which are not only by me considered classics, but by many, many other people. There is something about Don Cap's music that, for lack of a better word, is very traditionless. There seems as if there is no tradition that the records hold on to. It seems as if there is nothing that ever influenced the band. It seems as if it's taken out of place and out of time.
Thank you.
Would you agree with it?
That's a lovely compliment. That'd be like the best compliment someone could give me, I think, about music. Sure. Yeah. I think it transcends. I think it transcends a lot. And I think that's like best music can do that.
Yeah. And I'm like, of course, when you as people were working on the record, I'm very sure you were, of course, listening to music because, that's what is in our DNA. We listen to stuff. But let me ask it this way. Was there ever a moment when you were like, I would like to put something like that on our record?
Not that I remember.
See?
No.
And that is what I mentioned. What I was thinking about. Like, it seems as if it's completely autark in a way, which again I think is one of the best compliments you can make.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's meant to be as it is.
Then one thing that I have to ask about the band, and in hindsight, because now we've already mentioned the touring before, we've mentioned the writing, the recording, the publishing, of course. And then, of course, there comes this another tour cycle in 2000, 2001. Have you ever, in hindsight, felt as if you were pushing your luck with the artwork of the record? You know where I'm going to.
You talking about superstition?
Yes. For everybody who, shame on you, has never looked at the inside of that record, there are some pictures of car crashes, and we'll come to the importance of that.
Yeah, it's funny.
But in hindsight, superstition? I mean, like, superstition in hindsight is impossible.
Yeah, I think it is. But Ah, yeah. I leave it. I don't know. It's a funny coincidence. It really is. Like, yeah, couldn't have
And
planned that
and
though.
and then maybe we clue it up for those people who haven't looked at the Don Cap biography and like close details. Um, if I remember correctly, you had already agreed on ending the band in a way. And the story goes also as told by one of your opening acts, by Fred. And he said, okay, they already had decided on ending the band, and then they would play their last show in Detroit, I think, and they didn't even make it to Detroit because the van flipped off the road. Um, why was there no way of at least finishing it or doing it at a later stage? Those shows?
The one last show you mean?
Yeah.
Uh, well, um, I don't remember if it came up. I think that we, I guess we decided to end then after, like at the end of that tour. Like it was, that seemed inevitable. I don't remember if we decided ahead of the tour or it was just obvious to all of us. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
we can't go on like this. Um, I think we were pretty shaken up after that. Like, and probably the last thing any of us were thinking about was like, we got to get to Kalamazoo to play that gig. You know, we owe it to them. Um, but I'm not sure. Like after that, we went our separate ways after that crash. Like pretty pretty hard. I think Ian and Damon drove back to Chicago together. Uh, I remember I got a rental car in Ohio and drove to Pittsburgh. So anyway, could imagine what that ride was like. I don't know,
Well, it's easy.
but
You come from one bad football team to another.
yeah, I suppose. So anyway, yeah, no, we didn't get to play that last show, unfortunately. Yeah,
So
but
now we're at this point, and I have like maybe two Don Cap related questions left. With with the Punkgasm record, they toured Japan. No, not with Punkgasm. It was for World Class Listening Problem.
yeah.
Was there ever a moment where you felt like I should have stayed around for one more record?
Uh, uh, well, hmm. No, I mean, I really have like as a fan, honestly, and like I have complicated feelings about all that
With
happened after American
those two
Dawn.
records, yeah.
Yeah, like honestly, I for me it's easy to like sort of there's like sort of three categories, three there's sort of like the original lineup, there's American Dawn, and then
Everything after.
after. I have no relationship to the stuff after. Um, but I understand like why Damon did it, and I respect his decision to do it. Um, yeah, I'm glad that they played Japan. I'm
For
glad.
them.
Yeah, I'm glad. You know, more folks got to see Damon play these songs. You
Mm.
know, um, that's the show. You know.
Did you listen to the new record that he did out with Christian from L1011, the Yesness record?
Yes, actually, yeah, I think it's really great. I really
Yeah,
like what
it
they
is.
did. And then we all went to see them in New York. Ian, a bunch like all the whole Pittsburgh crew. Yeah, here in New York, we went to see them when they play.
Again, if
Yeah,
anybody wants to know a little bit more, December of 2024, we did the interview with those two guys. Um,
nice, nice.
and last Don Cap related question before we come to what you did afterwards. How does it feel to be part of probably one of the five quintessential touch and go records? Have you ever
Well,
thought about that?
hearing it put like that,
Well, it basically is, if you ask me. It would be
it's
one
an
of the shellac
honor.
records. It would be that Don Cap record. It would be um ah US Maple,
Well,
and then I would already be hard pushed to choose one of the other two. Probably Slint.
hmm, hmm.
And then which one would I choose for four? But you know what I mean, right? So it's definitely one of the quintessential touch and go records.
It'd be hard for me to put a Don Cab record even in like, I don't know. I mean, well, so many great touch and go records, but to be
Yes.
considered among, a top 20 would be an honor. So yeah, love that.
It would be higher for me.
Hmm,
So,
great.
with all due respect, you didn't stop being a musician after American Dawn. Can you quickly tell us what you're up to now? Because I know that you are in a working band, and I think it's important that we also push that a little bit here.
Yeah, it's funny because I really have no belief that there's any crossover between Don Cab fans and Tanlines fans.
That's
Now,
true, but nevertheless.
that's true, but nevertheless,
Yeah, yeah, nevertheless.
if there happen to be one or two, um, yeah, after Don Cab, after being in Storm and Stress and being in Don Cab, um, the first thing I wanted to do, weirdly, was play music with my brother. My brother, who in the '90s was a trance producer and DJ, and as electronic music was really burgeoning over here, and all of us were getting into it more and more. Um, my pull was toward that
Mhm.
and going to work with my brother on music. And we started making records together in Philadelphia, where he had a studio. And we eventually moved to New York and built a studio in New York and made a bunch of music together and ended up working with other artists and producing and recording for other people. And like so much of that I learned from Steve and like working with guys like Steve and Jim McGroark, and I don't know, having those experiences, they really inspired what I continued to work on and do. So and then in like 2008, we started this band Tanlines, which is me and a friend that was in a band that I was working with, and we just kind of naturally one night hang out, decided to make a track and throw it on YouTube. And it just it felt so like organic and just natural. And where we were coming from musically was like we were each coming from our own places. We were kind of just blending these elements that we were both into, and it's kind of a nice mix of things. It's eclectic, and it's like the most important thing about it is it's fun, it's joyful.
Yeah.
And you know when I think about playing in Don Cab and Storm and Stress, like I I think we were also doing it for joy,
Yeah.
you know, but I
And it's also
also
audible.
think, yeah, yeah. I think there's also like a seriousness and an urgency and a a depth to that we brought to it that I think at times is like toxically intense. And one of the things I felt so strongly after doing those bands for was really 5 years of my life, but really formative years of my musical life. It was like getting out of the army, you know? And I was ready to just like kind of be free and have fun and like embrace some of the guilty pleasures of like pop music. Oh, I like pop music actually. You know, okay, make a pop song. And so that allowed me to like be free and have fun. And when we started doing Tanlines, it just was like about that, and it continued being about that until it got to be like successful. And then all the, anxiety and thinking and stuff comes in. And, you know, that's the challenge of it.
Yeah,
And
and
so
now you're already going for, I mean, like it's not very close to 20 years, but it's
I,
16, 17 years.
I literally can't believe it. I just saw something. We're putting stuff together now, and I just like saw something from 16 years ago. I was like, 16 years I've been like in this project. This has been just, so I've kind of come to view it now at this point as like, this has just kind of become my musical home, my kind of platform for where, I can express what I feel like expressing.
Mhm.
And, that takes different shapes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think something that I like about Tanlines, listening to a couple of things for the interview, it's very joyful, definitely. And what I like about it, and that might be strange when I say that I put the Don Cap record so high on the Touch and Go list, I really like the playfulness and the, for lack of a better word, please don't get me wrong, simplicity of it
Mm.
compared to Don Cap.
Oh, that's intended. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's for a reason. I wouldn't say it's a reaction, but it's like, yeah, I'm happy to let the notes go into the expected place or
Yeah,
the
and
expected
let's
time signature.
yeah, and let's try to put it in a positive way. I mean, like,
Yeah.
how much more complex could you take it after American Don and still have it be joyful in a way? I think that is like,
I will sort of try to take this opportunity to see a through line. Actually, because we just um, pressed this new vinyl, the triple album, and it's been in my home now for a couple days. We've been listening to it a lot around the house, and like the kids are hearing it for the first time, and um, simultaneously there's like tan line stuff going on, and so I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like in both of the things, like both of the things are like alive around me, and I'm seeing strange parallels that I never saw before, and maybe those are just reflections of myself, right? But like
probably.
listening to some of this American Dawn, I'm hearing like things in it that are like they're almost like there's like silly, like some of the parts I think of like sound like circus music, you
Mhm.
know? If I remembered the names of the actual songs on the album, I could tell you what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, but probably that's also kind of a mystique, right?
Yeah, but there's a denseness to some of the tan line stuff. There's a busyness. There's certainly a focus on like a rhythmic aspect of it. The drums are so core to tan lines and to Don Cab in completely different ways. So I do see a lot of similarities in an abstract way.
So, Eric, first of all, thanks for all the insight into the Don Cap record and also into what you are doing now. But nobody leaves the Veil of Sound interviews without going through the quick fire round at the end. And I thought, okay, what could I give you? So I thought of bands that, in a way, might be similar, might not be similar, but that have as much a special place in my heart as Don Cap has. And I'll start with a few bands that are a little older than Don Cap. I'll start with Drive Like Jehu. I'll give you two of their records, the self-titled one versus Yank Crime. Which record would you rather listen to after this interview?
Um, hmm. What's considered the definitive one? The
Don't ask me. I
definitive.
don't know. For I mean, like they basically only have two, right? So I would say both of
Oh,
them. So, if you ever ask me,
um,
I would probably say the self-titled, but tomorrow I might also say Yank Crime. So don't ask me.
I would go for the self-titled.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Clint, I think, started around the same time, roughly around the same time as Don Cap. I'll give you two of their songs because with records, I mean, like it's difficult. I'll give you Breadcrumb Trail versus Good Morning, Captain. And I know that is difficult if you can't even remember the names to your own tracks.
I actually know exactly those songs. The
Cool,
first and the
wonderful.
last songs on Spiderland.
Yeah, that's why I took those.
Yeah. For clarity, Slint definitely started in I think 87 or 88.
Yeah, that's true. But when did
Don Cab
Spiderland come
is
out?
91.
Mhm.
Spiderland, I think, is 90 or 91.
I'll look it up while you think.
But I only just for historical purpose, just because I respect him so much. But
Yeah. No.
which would I choose?
Spiderland is 91.
Which would I choose? Spiderland is 91.
Yeah.
So I would. They're so like iconic, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like. I think Breadcrumb Trail.
Mm-hmm. And that is and they also share something with Don Cap, and that is the lack of appreciation after their disbandment here in Europe. Not in
Oh.
America, but here in Europe,
Hmm.
Splint never was a big thing, and I think after Punkgasm also not too many people, not enough people gave too much attention to Don Cap here in Europe.
Wow. Well,
let's take two bands that are definitely older than Don Cap. Q and Not You versus Devo.
Well, Devo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Q and Not You, great band, love them, lovely. That's not fair. It's not fair.
Would there any band that you would take over Devo? Because I was thinking of like Gangrene, Television, but then I thought like, no, we need a little fun aspect. So that's why I chose Q and Not You.
I think Devo's kind of an island, you know?
Just like Don Cap.
This might be in Europe. I don't know how it is here in America. I don't know. Like, I doubt any young people have ever heard of Devo. I don't know what kind of relationship young people have to Devo here. Probably not
here,
much.
none. Here, it's none.
So as far as like staying power, like in the culture, they're woven in ways people don't know, of course. But the Cars, the Cars? And I would only compare the Cars and Devo in a way that they're very American to me. Like, really, the Cars are a really American band, and Devo is a really American band.
Yeah.
And there's something about their almost minimalism that I don't know. Maybe it's too far to say, but I don't know. There's something about them I can see a parallel. But
yeah, it's also those are also bands that I think have an appeal to American audiences more than to European audiences.
Yeah.
Although I might give my little left finger to see Devo play. Haven't had that. Two more touch and go bands. I'll give you two records by US Maple. Long Hair in Three Stages versus Talker. That should be an easy one.
Which one came first?
Long Hair in Three Stages.
Yeah, that's what I forgot.
That's the one with the Matador.
I think that's the one I know the best. What's the other one called?
Talker. I think 5 years later.
Oh no, Talker. Sorry, Talker is my favorite.
Okay.
I think that's the one.
So the one that is more or less like only blackish and grayish on the cover?
I don't remember. Man,
don't worry.
This is like 30 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, but
when did that come out?
Okay,
US Maple. Listen, what Al Johnson, wasn't he in another band before US Maple? Well,
I'll look it up for you. But I'm very sure
okay.
that long hair in three stages was 94 because we 95 because we did a interview with Al last year for the 30 years.
Hmm.
And so that was in 95, and Talker is
Talker.
in 1999. And
I think
yeah,
so.
he was, of
Yeah.
course, he was in a few bands. Oh my goodness, what was the one that he was
Yeah.
most
What was the
known
band he
for?
was in before?
Snail Boy, Shorty, Snail Boy. Those are the
Shorty.
ones.
Shorty
Yeah,
is what I'm thinking of.
yeah,
I saw Shorty. Shorty played in Pittsburgh, like in early '90s. I don't remember whatever they were. It was like at CMU Coffee House, and
yeah. And that was his last band
yeah,
before he
yeah,
basically went on to Chicago to do US Maple.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Really like US Maple a lot. Really, that I remember when that Talker record came out because
did you know that he had a cameo in
that
High Fidelity?
that Talker album, and we yeah, that was on our radar.
Yeah,
You froze. You froze.
yeah, you froze too, but I can hear you, which is interesting. Um, did you know that Al Johnson had a cameo in wait, I'll take a second. Hmm?
Hello.
Hello, I can see you
What
again. You were
what
talking about the
happened?
Talker record, and I asked whether you knew that he had a cameo role in a pretty successful Hollywood movie.
Who? Al Johnson?
Yeah, in High Fidelity.
Oh, Ian's in High Fidelity too.
So I see.
Yeah, a lot of the guys in the neighborhood were in that.
Yeah,
I think you can see it. There's a Don Cab poster actually on the window of the store.
I'll look it up. I'm pretty sure that must make sense, definitely. So
Yeah, that was
U.S.
a
Maple
big.
was
Yeah.
so that was one of those, and I'll give you now, of course, Albini band. So you have to choose between Big Black and Shellac.
You know what? Yeah, I think any Steve Head would say Big Black probably, but uh, Shellac actually, I had much more of a relationship with Shellac just because of when they were around and when I was like in my discovery phase.
Mhm.
And I just got to see them play a bunch and just get to know them and like, yeah, huge, pretty huge, pretty huge.
And I have two last ones, non-related to music. You said you like pop music, so I'll give you Timbaland versus Timberlake.
Well, definitely Timbaland,
Mhm.
not Timberlake. Although I did just read Timbaland is like embracing AI.
Yeah.
And he is, I think, producing an AI artist. So I'm a little skeptical of that, but he's
For
a
the
real
moment, we'd stay with Timbaland.
he's a real one.
Okay.
He's a real deal.
And the last one, as you've mentioned Pittsburgh so often,
Hmm.
I have to ask this. Being a Packers fan, did the acquisition of Mike McCarthy benefit or weaken the Steelers? And we're not talking about an emotional, I'm a crybaby at the press conference in my hometown because I've just been appointed head coach. We're talking
Yeah,
from a
yeah.
just football perspective.
Okay. I can tell you, I had a very deep knowing at the beginning of this season that Mike Tomlin, it was going to be his last. I could just feel it in my bones.
Yeah.
And, I think Aaron Rodgers was part of his swan song.
Yeah, but
Now, now,
again, being a Packers fan, why do you choose Aaron
right.
Rodgers as your swan song? But
I know,
anyway,
but with the coincidence of Mike McCarthy now, right? So it, I think it's a win for the Steelers. I think it's good because I just think we're ready to move on from Tomlin.
okay.
Me personally, maybe I don't because I don't live there anymore. Maybe the city is like really mad about it. You know, uh, but
I,
I'm fine. I'm fine with moving on. Yeah,
I
I think
think
we're
from an
fine. Yeah.
emotional point of view, McCarthy is the only one, and that is where I'm definitely on the Steelers side. McCarthy
Good.
is the only one who could have come after Tomlin without the fan base being totally up in arms because, I mean, like he's from Pittsburgh. He was a Steelers fan through and through, and I mean, like he cried like a baby at his press conference. So
Yeah.
he showed that he's deeply grateful for his opportunity. However, it's a huge step back from Steelers policies. I mean, like Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin were all hired in their 30s, and now you pick a 62-year-old.
Mm. Mm.
It's a
Uh,
rich head coach.
yeah. Like yeah, gives you some pause for sure. Uh, well, maybe the front office is getting they're aging out. I don't know.
Maybe, maybe.
Uh,
So, Eric, thanks for all the
yeah.
insight into American Dawn, into your new music. Thanks for all the detailed answers. And if you ever come to Europe with Tanlines, please give me a holler early enough.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah,
I would absolutely love that. Thank you for having me. I feel really lucky to have gotten speak to you today. This is really nice, and
thank you very much.
I had no idea what I was getting into, but this is actually quite lovely.
See? So, Eric, thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks,
Bye
man.
bye.
Take care.
Bye.